Behind me you can see I've got the 1988 Coupe, nicknamed the little coupe that could. And if you remember from the previous videos, this car actually came from a friend of mine who had moved out to the west side of Canada a couple years ago, and he just wasn't using the car anymore because he picked himself up a newer GT350. So I've got the car, you know, we took the nitrous off, fixed the ignition switch problems, taking some of the more racer type modifications off the car. So today going to be starting on pulling this motor out. Everything should be pretty straightforward in here because between the wire tuck and just simplifying things, you know, the electric fan, some of all those parts, going to make life a lot easier to pull this engine out. Fairly confident I can probably get it done in about an hour's time. I've already drained the radiator. I'm just going to go through now and loosen up some of the header bolts. That way when I get it inside on the lift, it'll just make life that much easier. So this car is going to go to a more stockish looking theme. You know, those racing seats are going to come out of the car, and I've already got some stock LX seats lined up for it. And just, you know, the car is clean. It is a solid car. It's going to be a great car for someone. I'm probably just going to drive it around for the rest of the season and enjoy it a little bit. And if it sells this year, great. If I end up selling it in the spring or I turn it into a project, who knows. So Dale just left the shop. I'm going to maximize my time on the hoist right here. I feel like I can get this motor out pretty quick. So we'll get the power steering pump disconnected. You know, the cold air kit, we'll get the fuel lines unhooked, get the exhaust unhooked, a couple of the main connectors in the back, you know, the salt and pepper that run the injector harness, and then get the car raised up, get the bell housing unbolted, and the starter, and we'll probably be pretty much good to go. And then we'll have our motor here that I freshened up that came out of the 93 limited edition convertible lemon dropped. So as you can see here, and I'm not done, you know, did black block, oil pan, and I used the Ford gray for the valve covers and the upper intake, and something a little bit different. I just painted the throttle body, IAC, and all that in black. So yeah, went ahead and cleaned everything up, prepped it all, you know, using Scotch pads, brake clean, degreaser, all that. Actually pressure washed it before anything, but it was a fairly clean motor to start with. Wanted to make sure that the water pump was changed and gasketed. Actually snapped a bolt off here, so need to replace this bolt, and that resulted in taking the timing cover off. So timing cover has a new gasket on it, and everything here should be pretty much good to go. Gonna get rid of the MSD cap just because I am going to be going with these blue plug wires once I get them cleaned up, and this motor should look real presentable. And we'll be going in the 88 Coupe that's sitting back over here, so we'll get that motor into the 88 here, and it'll be one step closer to being de-racered, so to speak. And that's it. So I'm going to get the arms positioned here on the hoist, get everything ready underneath the hood, and let's see how long it takes for me to get this motor out of the car. Alright, so we're all set up here, guys. I got my hood light set up, got some of my tools ready here. Gonna start getting these headers off and just get cracking at getting this car going.
The gas is almost ready to come in.
It is.
Like it won't even run now.
No, it won't. Because it's almost ready to come out. So you can see behind me, just got the motor out of the little coupe that could. Took probably about an hour and a half in total, and the only reason for the half is we were actually wrestling the header from the driver's side. I left it attached to the first section of the H-pipe. There was a V-band down there. I thought there'd be enough room for it to move out of the way. There probably was, but things were getting trapped between the steering shaft and the motor and the ground and everything else, so we just said screw it, and we pulled it real quick and got everything out. No problems at the end, so that's good. So you can see here, it's a pretty nice looking motor. There's maybe 1,500 miles on it since it was built, and it's a built 306 bottom end with a B303 in there with Edelbrock heads and the Performer 2 intake. There's probably some rockers and a couple other things on there. So my friend definitely didn't chintz out when he was building this motor. He did go all the way with it. Not a huge fan of Ford Blue, and especially with this motor going in lemon dropped. Definitely going to want to change up a couple colors here. This blue, I'll probably get that black. Actually, I might just end up painting the whole front end of the motor black. And then valve covers and intake, I'll have to incorporate some yellow to get the whole lemon drop theme with the motor. And finally, I have a set of brand new yellow Excel plug wires that are high performance, so I'll swap out these tailors and put yellow wires on here, and this should be a great motor for that project. Going over to the engine stand behind me here, motor's actually getting a little bit dusty, but she's pretty much ready to go. This is going to go into the car, and over here, buried on the floor over there, you probably can't see it, is the K-member that I cleaned up earlier. So I'm going to show you guys how I cleaned that up and got it looking all nice and new. I got some factory control arms down on the floor down there as well, because I'm going to be taking out the tubular K-member in the car so that I can use that in lemon dropped as well. You can see how high this car is now sitting. It sat high in the front before, but now it sits even higher. That's because of the Eibach drag springs that are in it. So here you can see the engine bay with the heart out. Again, guys, it's pretty straightforward. I was really happy with the way this motor came out with all the pollution stuff off and the wire tuck having cleaned everything up. It was super easy to get this engine out. There will be some goodies staying in the car, so I think that transmission was fully rebuilt and gone over. There's an aluminum drive shaft in it. Maybe I'll take that out, I'm not 100% sure. The car has gears, so electric fan will stay. So there's a couple nice little things that'll be with the car. Short shifter, things like that. Little things that will make the car fun and more drivable on the street and not so much like a race car. So that's about it for now. Going to get the K-member and everything else out and ready. You can see there's a truck on the lift here in the way. Once Dale finishes up with that, you can get that K-member out, put the stock one in. Got to get the front springs and struts sorted out because I don't want to stick with Lakewoods and Eibach drag springs. Yeah, I'm gonna have to find another set of struts and springs to put in the car. But other than that, it should be pretty straightforward putting everything back in. That'll be another episode. For now, tune in, check out how I restored the K-member and got that all cleaned up and looking nice. And next video for the little coupe that could is going to be putting the heart, the new old heart, back in the car and just turning it into a driver. Alright guys, another morning here at the shop, and today I'm going to be focusing on getting this K-member all cleaned up and restored because I'm actually going to be using this K-member for the 1988 black coupe. I'm going to just take that motor, transmission, and K-member because it has a tubular K-member and control arms. So I'm just going to take everything out of that 88 coupe. Going to put in a factory K-member here, which you can see it's been sitting in a barn for many years, over 20 years. Funny enough that this K-member actually came with a bunch of spare parts with the very first Foxbody I ever bought. So it was 15 years old, So we're talking 25 years ago. Bought my first 83 Mustang GT, and it came with essentially what was left of an 82 Mustang GT, but all in parts. The guy had restored it, rolled it, and it was actually a T-top car, and it looked pretty sweet, but he'd stripped all of the parts off, and all the parts came with my 83. And this has just been sitting and sitting and sitting. Never had a reason to use it, well, up until now. So I'm just actually taking the struts off, going to take the tie rods off, get the spindles unmounted, sand down some of the corrosion here. It's really not in bad shape, and get a nice coat of black paint on it. So you can see here, it came out all in one piece. You know, it's probably how he wanted to strip the car down, so it still has these old struts on it. Amazingly enough, they still bounce back up. But I'm going to take those off, get this rack off, get the spindles off, like I said, sand this down here, and get some fresh black paint on it, and it's going to look just as nice as the rest of the underside of that 88. So you go, guys. I'm just scuffing all the little surface rust areas with some 120, using some brake clean as degreaser, wiping it down, just making sure that all of the loose rust and surface areas are scuffed, degreased, and that'll be pretty much ready to put some good paint on it, and this thing will be looking like new. Alright guys, time for paint. Got everything degreased, scuffed down, got rid of all the surface rust, and just going to use some semi-gloss black rust paint. You know, it'll do the job for the car it's going in, and let's get spraying. There you go, guys. K-member is all cleaned up and ready to go for a nice install. Took a little bit of elbow grease, took a little bit of time, but at the end of the day, got a really nice result, and once it's in the car, it'll just be one of those things that differentiates, you know, a car that someone just threw some stuff together versus taking the time to pull things apart and getting a really nice clean product, because that 88 is super clean in there. And you know, if I'm going to be taking that tubular K-member, something that's going in there needs to be just as nice to represent how clean that car is. There's nothing worse than having a really clean car and then you're putting a bunch of rusty parts or something else on it. So I want to make sure that whoever ends up buying that car, you know, doesn't have to worry and can rest assured that, you know, things are clean. They don't have to worry about corrosion in the future, and you know, just enjoy the car. Car is going to need some paint, as we've seen in the other videos, but in terms of drivability and reliability, all that's going to be taken care of, which is the most important part. Like I said, is making sure we don't have corrosion and that you have a really clean base to work with, It'll give somebody else the opportunity to put their own personal touches on it and make the car their own.